Hey yo, welcome to the Godcast.
I hope y'all are buckled up because things are about to get weird.
I don't understand why you chose me.
You want to change the world, son. So do I.
Where are we at in terms of history on the timeline? Where are we exactly? I'm just trying to uncover the truth and bring forth what I can see as the truth. The Bible seemed to be predicting more things than any other conspiracy theory type information, Look, one thing's for certain, that there is so much power in the name of Jesus Christ. That I know for sure.
Welcome to Godcast.
Welcome to Godcast.
The Goodness Over Darkness.
The Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here is your host.
Here's your host, Emmanuel Kingman.
Welcome to the light.
Welcome to the light.
Welcome to the light.
It's showtime. What is going on, everybody? I am your host, Emmanuel Kingman. Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. How are you all doing? I am solo yet again. Mimi is just working her tail off anymore. So she is not here for the interview or the intro. So no worries. She will be here very soon. She's actually right here. She's going to be on my special birthday episode. You guys can see the background for that. But on today's episode, I had on special guest Daniel from the End of Days Radio. He's going to be on my birthday episode as well, which is why my background is what it is. And Daniel was a phenomenal guest. We talked about a lot of different things, from possible abductions, UFO sightings, to the dollar bill and what's on the dollar bill, to the different secret societies and the vampires that are maybe living for a very long time. Lots of different things. Lots and lots of different things. You guys will definitely get a kick out of this episode. Daniel has a lot of information. So we talked about Enki. He told me about Zeus. He told me some things about Zeus I've never heard before. Very interesting. You'll find out about all that stuff within this episode. Make sure I'm going to keep this one short because I am tired and I have a lot going on anymore. So don't want to sit up here babbling too much longer. I am excited, super excited. So before I wrap this up, I will say I'm super excited to have all these people together for my birthday episode. So I'm actually going to have two roundtables that week. I'm going to have my birthday roundtable, December 7th, Tuesday, December 7th. And then Saturday, December 11th, I'm going to have another one called Breaking Out of the Box. So while Tuesday is more for people who are in Christ, Saturday is going to be people who have broken free from the matrix. So all the people that are entering Christ have broken free from the matrix as well, but it's some people don't gravitate towards Christ. So I still wanted, so what my idea was to do just one thing, but there were too many people I wanted to include. And I was like, it would be better if I split these into two different things. Because you still say there's going to be 8 people on my birthday episode. So it'll be fun though. But I didn't want to have all that many people. The ones from my birthday episode plus from the other one, it'd be like 15 people like that. That would be ridiculous. So it's broken into 2 and it'll be a very, very fun time. And I can't wait to smash some idols and just tear down the walls, the false walls of reality that have been put up, and destroy some illusions. I think Daniel does a bit of that tonight, so you guys will definitely want to stay tuned for the entirety of this episode. It gets into a lot of stuff. He shows a vampire bat as one of the 13 families, family crest, or something, family, some kind of thing. I'm not totally sure what it would be called, but something to the effect of a family crest. So make sure you check out Daniel and all his stuff on End of Days Radio. Stop by, give our love. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, rate and review, comment, send it directly to somebody who you think this episode would benefit. Go to my website, emmanuelkingman.com. Hit me up for some energy work. However you guys want to help out the show is a great thing for the show, and it helps me. I've put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's not even that I care about fame or money or anything. Obviously, I paid Clipchamp money to make a fake commercial. I was making a parody commercial because I listen to so many podcasts and people that are getting paid for commercials are doing commercials, and I was like, I can do a better commercial than that, something that can be more helpful, and I'll actually pay to do it. So I'm not getting paid to do it. I'll pay to do it to make a better commercial. And it's just a parody. So I like doing those types of things. So I don't necessarily want money for it, but it's I'm just putting all effort into getting the truth out there. I'm spending a lot of time trying to get the truth out there. And this is what Jesus wants from me. This is what my sole purpose is, to be truthful. And a lot of people ask me different questions often about Jesus and about how they can get more in touch with Jesus, how they can better themselves. And the one thing I always say is be a good person and be truthful and talk to Jesus. But the one thing I always say is that you have to be living in truth. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. When you live in the truth, you see that. You have to be truthful all the time, and it takes time. You're not just going to go from being a churchgoer or former churchgoer to all of a sudden you're saved. It's a process. It took me, I'd say, a full year and a half of committing myself to Jesus, but I wasn't fully committed until I was saved. And then once I was saved, it was still like I didn't know what it was really for the next 2 months, and then it started just going. It's like the train going up the hill. Like, I think I can. Or Tom's the tank engine. Yeah, I think I can. And then now I'm like full steam ahead, like going downhill because I know what it is now. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time and practice. Jesus, God, wants to make sure that you're in it for the long haul. He doesn't want you to give up. So we'll test you. Keep throwing tests at you, or he allows Satan to throw tests at you, we'll say, to see if you can get pulled away from Jesus. And to me, it just brings me closer because I seem to be passing the test because I just stay truthful and faithful, and I am patient, and I allow the other shoe to drop before I make a judgment. But it takes time to get there. So you guys will get there. Just keep practicing, and you will reap what you have sown. We have all sown many seeds of doubt, fear, guilt, shame, many different things. We've done many different things, and Jesus comes along and gives you the chance to repent. And true repentance means not that you go say 10 Hail Marys and it's all good. It means that you confess your sin, not to man, but you confess your sin to God. And then you tell God, I don't want to do that anymore. Please help me not do that anymore. And then when the opportunity comes up again for you to do that thing, don't do it. And then you'll gain more power over whatever that thing is. And the more power you gain, the less power that thing has over you. And maybe it might be cursing. I curse often, or I used to curse very often. Now I curse somewhat still. It doesn't have a power over me as strong as it did, but it still does to the effect that I'm still doing it. And I'm not condemning anyone for cursing. I'm just saying, using this as an example, these are the types of things that happen. So it just takes time, is all. Time, and we have to face ourselves. We have to, all the things that are within us have to come up. We have to look at it in order to let it go, in order to not do it any longer, in order to truly repent. It must come up, and we must observe it, and we must know that we're not supposed to do it, and then we're supposed to not do it, and then it will slowly stop coming to you. It won't be there any longer. That's how you beat karma. That's how you transmute energies. All these different terms you hear in the spiritual community, they're real things. So there's that. But make sure you check out Daniel's stuff and everything else. I already said it also. And stay tuned at the end of the episode for a preview of the next episode. I'll have Daniel's links in the description. So if you are able to, go ahead and just look in the link, click on one, send them a message, and be like, hey, I heard you on Godcast. And, just say what's up, or just check out his stuff and hit like and comment whenever you're watching a show. Just interact with it. If you like what you're saying, hit the like button. I know it's silly to hear someone saying it over and over, but it's really something we don't think about because we're just watching the video like, okay, but to the person creating the stuff, it does go a long way. So help everybody out, and it'll come back to you. All right. So without further ado, here is Daniel. Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a man who has been researching demons, reptiles, and gang stalking. He has been familiarizing himself with the Bible and is getting to know the true nature of the demonic forces that have invaded our universe. He is host of End of Days Radio. Everybody welcome Daniel to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to come on the Godcast. I could not be more excited to talk to you today.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on, my friend. It is a pleasure to have you on here. I have been following you on Twitter for a while, and then I heard you on Josh Monday's Christian and Conspiracy, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that you did podcasts. I mean, I saw that your Twitter handle was End of Days Radio, but I just thought maybe that was just, a thing. So I'm glad to finally get to speak to you.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And my show has been around for quite a while, but it's been small. And, it's had kind of a cult following. There's a lot of people that know about it, but it's never really broken through to become like a big show like the Joe Rogan Experience or anything like that. And I really do think that has something to do with my sustainability, why I haven't been under fire like a lot of these other characters in the sort of conspiracy paranormal world, the world of COINTELPRO and agents working against agents and fake people. And if you are real, you tend to get the plug pulled on you rather quickly. So I'm proud to still be around after more than a decade.
Wow, a decade? That's a really long time. Yeah. Well, Joe Rogan's definitely controlled that position. And he was already a celebrity before he was doing it. So
Yeah, I remember him from Fear Factor telling people to stick spiders in their mouths and chew on all kinds of animal parts and things that are just on the surface just look demonic in nature.
well, yeah. How about that? I remember him from Spin City, actually. Or what was it? Not Spin
News
City.
radio.
Yeah, news radio. Yeah, I watched that a little bit when I was a kid. But enough about Joe Rogan. It is awesome that you've been doing it for that long. So how old are you?
I actually just turned 39. So I'm at the point now where I'm not quite as strong as I used to be. I don't heal as fast. I don't run as fast. I ache, which is probably a bad sign at 39. But I'm more apt to focus on the mind and the spirit now that I'm getting a little bit older. I think that's where I should focus my energies, and that's kind of where I'm going. I'm not quite the superhuman that I used to be when I was young and I was on the wrestling team in high school, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like my mind is just as strong as ever. And hopefully my spiritual armor is just as strong as ever, because let me tell you, these are some dark times indeed.
Yes, sir. And well, I mean, we look at the Matrix movies and Neo, he doesn't have use for weapons once he realizes the potential of his mind. And Jesus was, Neo's obviously a copy of Jesus, but Jesus was very much the same way, and saying that my followers will do more than me, will do greater things than I do. So the mind is extremely important. The spiritual nature, as you're saying, is extremely important in these times that are lying ahead. So, why don't you give my audience a little bit of background about yourself, how you got started with this, with doing this over a decade now? How did you get into conspiracies? We'll just go down. What actually are you into? I don't want to, throw anything in your mouth. So what is your niche and how did you get started with it?
So, I have no problem being labeled a conspiracy theorist, because really that's what I am. That's how we all start. So, going back to my childhood was very weird. And that's really the reason why I'm probably more likely to believe in certain things, certain conspiracies, and stories people tell me about having supernatural encounters and things of that nature. So, going back, my childhood, I grew up in a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a cult because that probably wouldn't be appropriate, but it was very heavy. Um, there's a certain way of looking at the Bible and looking at Christianity that was a little bit forceful, looking back. And um, there were things that happened back then, things that would probably be considered hauntings or demonic. And when I became a teenager, I just wanted to shut all this stuff out. I wanted to embrace atheism because to me that was more fun. Who wants to worry about a God looking over your shoulder? Who wants to have to memorize Bible verses or anything like that? I just didn't want anything to do with it because I associate it with control and with being a bummer and things like that. So even though I had experiences, I just denied them. It's not that hard to do if you set your mind to it. But I'd say when I was about 17, I was out with some friends, and of course, I was going through a rebellious stage and getting into hard music, rap, metal. Yeah, started, of course, drinking, and of course, started smoking pot. And I was with a couple friends of mine. We were off doing our thing. We call it smoking out back then, where we would all get in the little cab of the truck together and we'd smoke pot and smoke a bunch of, we call it smoking bowls, and we just fill up the whole truck full of smoke. And that was just the coolest thing in the world back then. Now it seems incredibly crazy.
I was right there with you. I would do the same thing, me and my friends.
But my friends dropped me off one day about a block or 2 blocks, a block and a block away from my home. There's a hill that goes up a hill that leads to the street that I live on. They dropped me off there, and I was walking up the hill, and night came about, and I saw this little star or light off in the distance. What the heck is that? I remember seeing things like that when I was a kid, when I was having these like haunting experiences and stuff like that. But I didn't know what that was. It was just a light, and it'd flash. It started flashing different colors, like you hear about UFOs doing, flashing orange, green, yellow, orange, green, yellow, red. It was just doing this over and over, just blinking
Just
brightly.
blinking in and out.
And then it started to come closer. So now now that it's captured my attention, now that I'm giving it my mental energy, paying attention to it, it's like it starts to lock on me, and it starts to get closer and closer. I'm just standing there, with this look on my face, like, oh my God, what's going on? I was paralyzed because it was just so incredible. And as it got closer and closer, I started to notice it was shaped like a pyramid, shaped exactly like a pyramid, like a triangle craft people talk about, a triangle UFO. A lot of people see those. That's what it was. It was a triangle UFO, but it was small. I'd say it was about the size of a Volkswagen Bug at the most, maybe a little bit bigger. And it had on
How
top
close
of
was it to you?
started off really far away, and it just kept coming closer and closer. The closest it reached was probably about 15 feet away. Where if I
15
had,
feet?
yeah,
Wow.
it had these weird lights on top. Like, okay, I saw the orange light, the yellow light, the green light, and the red light, but the way that they were laid out on the top looked like FAA lights, like an airplane. Like it's trying to look like an airplane, or it's disguised as an airplane, or maybe it just needs to have the same lights to function. I don't know, but that definitely caught my eye. It also caught my eye that it didn't seem really big enough for anybody to fit inside of. Like maybe I could see a little gray alien squishing in there, or some kind of elf or something, or a little Ant-Man. I don't know. But it didn't look like something that a full-grown adult would really be able to squish down in and be able to pilot. I have to question now if it was some kind of drone or something like that. And then underneath, it had the stereotypical big, round, white light in each corner. And then in the center, obviously that's probably something to do with propulsion. It was spinning a little bit. And then underneath, it had what looked like a octagonal disco ball, like a disco ball, but with probably like 16 sides or something like that. And it was outlined with this red laser, and the inside looked completely black. And it was just over me spinning like a disco ball. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is first contact. Like, who's ever had this happen before? I'm literally thinking that I'm like the first guy to ever meet aliens. I don't really know what's going on, but my heart starts to palpitate, and I become afraid. I start thinking about Whitley Strieber and anal probes and various torturous things that I've heard of alien abductees going through. I didn't want to go through anything like that. Plus, in addition to that, I was raised to believe that aliens were actually demonic entities. So I had that bit of doubt in what I was seeing in the back of my mind. So once it started to get close, I felt like my heart was going to stop, and I just panicked. And I prayed to Christ. I prayed to Jesus Christ, and the thing started to kind of back off, and it flew away, and it disappeared. Later on, had some black helicopters sort of flying above me, checking me out. I went for a little walk after that because my mind was just blown. And that was that. I told everybody I knew about it. Nobody really believed me. They thought
You were what, 17?
Yeah, I was 17. Everybody said, Daniel, you were high. You were on pot. Why? But you don't see stuff like that on pot. This was there. It was right in front of me. It was, if I was high on pot, seeing that shocked any of that out of my system. It definitely wasn't a pot-induced hallucination. I don't think anybody would even see stuff like that on harder drugs. But the next day, so I'm in the living room with my mother, and the thing actually comes back. And at this point, I wasn't high on pot or anything like that. It was just me and my mom. We both saw it, and it kind of did the thing where it started flaring up really big. The lights were blinking, and it was even more so than the first night. It was flaring up really big, like a supernova, and jumping around, which it didn't do the first time. This time it was just going crazy. It was like, zzz, 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 like they say that UFOs will do, they'll kind of show off using their propulsion, and they'll turn on a dime. And this time my mother was the one that prayed, and same thing happened, just disappeared right before us. And
Wow.
that's when I started to think, okay, life is not like I think. There's more out there, and I don't know.
I had a similar experience. I was 14. Yeah, I think I was 14, maybe 15, but somewhere around there. And me and my friends, we were rolling up a blunt. We were about to smoke. I was actually rolling it up, so I'm looking down, and my one buddy taps me, and he goes, "Look, it's like a UFO or something." and it was saucer shaped. It wasn't pyramidal shaped. It was saucer shaped, and it was spinning. But like you said, the colors were there. It was red, yellow, whatever else was there, and it's like kind of spinning. And when my buddy noticed it, it came towards us, and I was looking down because I'm rolling up the blunt, but then I look up and I see it. And the weird thing about it was like we saw it and it was there, and then just it wasn't. I don't know. Don't remember it like zooming off or anything. I just remember we just went about our business. Well, the next day at school, so this was like a Saturday. The next day at school, Monday, I was telling someone in the hall, I was like, yeah, we saw a UFO. We were smoking a blunt in the field, or we're getting ready to smoke a blunt, and we saw a UFO. And I was telling this person, they're like, no. I was like, yeah, I'll bring it to my friends. So I brought them over. None of my other friends remembered. And I'm like,
Oh,
but you all told me to look at it. And then later in life I realized maybe it was because I wasn't looking at it. Maybe something happened then to make them forget, and I wasn't paying attention to it at that time, so maybe I didn't get hit with it. I don't know.
yeah, that's really interesting. I do know that these these beings, whatever they are, they do seem to have the ability to erase people's memories and also put memories on top of memories, mask them, so to speak. And I always wondered if I was gonna like suddenly remember that the UFO actually did suck me up and do something to me and drop me off. And I just thought it was like a couple seconds, but it was hours.
Right.
But it's been a couple decades, and or yeah, a couple
Well,
decades.
you don't
Wow.
want I'll tell you, you don't want to remember. I've experienced the abduction phenomena my whole life, and I've
Oh,
uncovered memories from doing meditations, from doing psychedelics. I went deep into my subconscious, or my psyche very many times, very deeply. And I found a lot of stuff in there that was really repressed, and I was abducted my entire life. And this was just one of those experiences. So I don't recommend anybody out there who thinks they may have been abducted to definitely don't do any past regression type of hypnotherapy or anything like that. It is not something you want to remember.
oh wow. Okay, so you're no stranger to this type of phenomena. You're actually an abductee. That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and they definitely are demons, and they are the byproduct of the fallen angels. It tells us in the Bible, the Book of Enoch, that the fallen angels were messing with the DNA of humans and the beasts and the bees and the reptiles and all this. Well, it's just everything, every alien that we know of is a combination of human DNA plus an insect or an animal. Even when you go to the Egyptian gods, they have the bird heads, they have the anteater heads, the dog heads, all this. That's what the Nephilim are. The angels didn't have sex with humans. It's impossible. They come from another dimension. They can't. So they just mess with our DNA, and that's what the Nephilim are. Many different types of things.
Yeah, in fact, to add a little bit onto that, that's incredible, first of all. But to add a little bit onto that is, if you look into Sumerian, Enki actually used animal parts to create demons, and they also used a dead god named Kingu when humans were created. They used clay and blood, the blood of Kingu, and kind of mixed everything together, most likely alluding to the same thing. I've seen some of those pictures of Egypt where the crocodile heads and things like that, and it almost looks like they're working in a laboratory and they have different specimens. Like, okay, this is this person we made. This is this guy's got a cat head, et cetera, et cetera. So as to what was going on back then, I can only imagine. But it wasn't just giants. Like a lot of people think, oh, the Nephilim were giants. Well, yeah, you get giants when you mess around with DNA. Giants are produced, but it wasn't just giants. A lot of the Nephilim were monstrous. They were
Yes.
monstrous creatures with multiple heads.
Abominations.
Absolutely, abominations. And during the battle in the Book of Giants between the good angels and the fallen watchers, also known as the Grigori, it's said that there were amongst the giants, the sons of the Watchers, the fallen Watchers, there were demons as well, and they were shape shifting. And they actually, during the heat of the battle, they shape shifted into people so that they could hide amongst the people because they knew they were going to get beat. They knew they were getting beat by the angels. So first the battle was even, but then the archangel started using fire and brimstone. Then it was over, Johnny. That was it.
Yeah, well, I think the humans were giants, much larger than we are now. And what we call, when we say the Nephilim were giants, we would actually be the giants that we're talking about, but the Nephilim would be the titans that are talked about, that are huge. Like the Book of Enoch says 4,500 ells, or 3,000 ells. He says 3,000 ells, which is 4,500 feet. I mean, that is massive. And I've been invited to Facebook and Instagram groups that show a lot of these rock formations. I mean, people are super dedicated to this, where it's just these rock formations that are in shape of humans that look like the remains of humans, as if they were flash frozen there, fossilized in some way, and that they turned into rock. And what I've gotten in my meditations all lines up with that. And when I look at certain rock formations, I'm like, yeah, that was definitely something that was living, and then it just died in that position a long time ago.
Yeah, there's a guy on YouTube. I think his name's Mud Fossil University, and he does just like what you're talking about, where he takes a lot of these rocks and old structures and he cuts pieces off and he has them tested for DNA. And um, supposedly he actually cut some fingers off what he thought was a fossilized giant, and the DNA results came out as positive. So I mean, there's no way I can verify that, but I'm leaning towards there's definitely something there, just based on what you're saying, based on what's out there. And okay, so to add some evidence to that, we know Noah, he lived 950 years, and these pre-diluvial kings, the god kings of the past, they were said to live 30,000 years, 15,000 years. And then once the flood happens, the lifespan of man gets very small and short. But you really have to wonder, when humans were living much longer, did this have something to do with perhaps they were much bigger?
Yeah, I think that has a big part. I think that that's a big missing piece when we take the context of what we're told in the Bible, and then we try to fit it in us, and we're like, how would that work? But if they're much larger, then time might work differently even for them. Maybe time goes by quicker because they're larger. I don't know if that's true or not. And I believe that there were two suns in our sky, that the moon is a false light that is there now because the sun that was there somehow burst, and that was the event that triggered off the volcanic explosion in the 1800s. And that's probably the event that quote unquote killed the dinosaurs, where a comet came down and then the volcano goes off. You have the year without a summer in 1816. And I think that was the second ending of the world, as talked about in the Bible.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff once you get sort of past behind the 1800s, before the 1800s. That's about, if you look it up, that's about when the camera was discovered. So we have this weird phenomena of the camera sort of popping up all of a sudden, yet we have pictures that seem to be a little bit older, and it's not very clear exactly when things started coming about. If you look at a lot of old photos, if you're into the like mud flood, alternate history type of research, you see that it looks like everybody's posing. I mean, they got nice bowler hats on, they got their nice clothes on, their teeth look, a lot of times their teeth look white, and they look like they're just standing there posing. They don't really look real, and there's mud everywhere. And you think to yourself, like, this doesn't look like a real sort of situation. There should be more people in the background. There should be this, there should be that. There's something very fuzzy about history around that time. And coincidentally, that's when the United States kind of started up, 1776. And when everybody started to become more industrialized, like all of a sudden we're talking about more complex technologies. But really, I mean, it's a toss up. History is just, they tell it however they want to. That most likely, real actual history is nothing like we remember. And there's evidence of cities in North America, of woolly mammoths, of giants using technology. There's stories from the Native American tribes of all this stuff. There's evidence of star forts everywhere. Like if you look at my city, Seattle, it's actually a city built on top of a city. There's the Seattle Underground, which is a very popular tour. And what I've come to find, Seattle's by the water, parts probably sunk and mud eroded, blah, blah, blah. But why is it like every other city is like this? Why does every other city seem to have these ecological layers and we can actually go down and find extra rooms to buildings and stuff like that? It's just astonishing. Then you have the phenomena of, I think it was around the 1900s, 1900 to like 1930, where they were tearing all the old buildings down and just tearing them down one by one for no reason. And all of a sudden, this is another big thing they talk about in the mud flood world. They talk about how they're tearing the buildings down and just replacing them for no reason. Like, why would they take a perfectly good building that's designed to last hundreds, thousands of years and replace it? It makes no sense. You really have to ask yourself, what have these guys with endless amounts of money really been doing? What have they been doing to shape the world? Could they have been shaping it more than we even can grasp or fathom? Perhaps our whole timeline is fake.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of that type of shows lately. I had 4 in a row. I think it was episode 70 to 74 and or 70 to 73. These episodes, it's just, well, actually 74, you could throw that one in there too, because we talk about the same type of stuff. We go through different prophecy and history, and you can follow that it doesn't make sense according to how everything else was going for a time. If we want to keep it biblical, I'm not a Christian. I identify with Christ, but not Christianity. I think religion was created at the last reset. I don't think it existed before that at all. I think there was just the truth, and the Bible was the book that we kept that was about the truth. And it was something that as a people everywhere, we were learning this information. And then the 1700s happen and the Freemasons are created. And that's when all of the different religions are created. They give the crescent moon buildings to Islam, they give the cross buildings to Christianity, and they say Islam is basically Judaism, just different a little bit, and it's kind of Christianity, but only part of it. It's like, okay, how can we divide up the people best we can? And the Moors, or the Moorish people, they were apparently deemed as Islamic, and the white people were deemed as Christians. And it's like, okay, now we're going to divide them by color. And so it was just so much division. And yeah, like you're saying, it's all cover up. I mean, honestly, we don't know how old this place is. We don't know anything. We can't verify anything outside of our own existence for certain. But then once we start relying on certain things, once you look at the World's Fairs, it's like all of history is fake. You just have to look at the World's Fairs and what they say, that the construction that took place and the deconstruction of all of that construction in these cities that just had these major fires that were so major that they looks like they blew up concrete buildings. I mean, it wasn't just normal fires like Chicago fire, San Francisco fire, and they're all, a cow knocked over a candle and then burned down all of Chicago. Like, give me a break. How are we supposed to fall for those things? So when we see that, it is just all bullshit, which brings us back to how what you were just saying, these people with all this money, how did they shape our world? And that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight, is the money. And the fact that we're using New World Order dollars, that's what we exchange. This monopoly money that we use, it is a complete like slap in the face to God, because it is claiming another world's money as something that's available here. So, do you want to get into the dollar bill a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, a big part of my story is the money because, like a lot of people, I talked about this on other shows, but I kind of got into Alex Jones. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but that was sort of my entry point. We know he's control opposition, yet he seems to serve a dual purpose. Of course, he's misdirecting people, but at least as far as the initial sort of thud of, hey, there's something going on. When Alex Jones would point out the worldwide banking system, the Federal Reserve, and being able to look at the dollar bill and see a pyramid, being able to look at Washington, D.C., seeing things like obelisks and pyramids. There's a lot of those in France as well as in Paris. It makes you think, like, what are the chances that these people that supposedly own the banking system and the fact that these symbols are on the dollar and these symbols are spread around the world in front of all the government buildings, what are the chances that that's all a coincidence? Probably not really much at all. Getting to the dollar, you have the pyramid with the eye on top, and it says right there, Novus Ordo Seclorum. No, it says something else. It says something that means order of a new age. So it says that right on the dollar bill. I spent my last dollar bill, so I don't have one in front of me. Sorry about that.
No worries. I'll try to pull one up on the screen here.
Yeah, that'd be perfect if you could do that.
Yeah. So go ahead. You can continue on while I get this up.
So if you look at a dollar bill, you could also look really close at one of the corners, and it actually has an owl hidden in there as well. And that owl, that could mean many things. It could be Minerva, that you might remember from the Clash of the Titans movie. Athena had a little owl named Minerva, and that's actually representative of wisdom. Yeah, it does say Novus Ordo Seclorum, so that roughly translates to Order of a New Age. So they tell you right there. We also got the pentagram right here above the eagle. So the stars actually form a Star of David or a pentagram. The fact that there's an eagle even on there, the eagle is symbology. Some people might know that the eagle is representative of Zeus. It was Zeus who had an eagle go and swoop up a young boy and take it back to him so that Zeus could molest the kid. A lot of people don't realize that.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yes, Zeus, as in Greek mythology, he's the first known child molester. He's the first known pedophile. In fact, at the time, the Greeks said that he invented pedestry, which is the practice of a grown man raising and molesting a young boy, basically. And that was perfectly accepted back then. And if you look at who if you look at who's in control nowadays, it's basically, well, the Vatican's a big part of it, and you can put two and two together that these people, these black nobility, came from ancient Rome, and they were worshipers of Jupiter or Zeus, and today they are still practicing pederasty, which is a form of pedophilia, and they're doing worse things, of course. But you can see how these pagan practices have been passed directly down. And as far as Zeus goes, he's a person that goes by many other names, one of them being Baal.
Does he? I never heard that.
Yeah.
Wow, this is super interesting.
Yeah. So Baal is from the Canaanite world. He's from the land of Canaan.
Before you go any further, real quick, while I still have this up, where is the owl? I remember it being on here. I can't.
Oh boy, I would have to search for it. He's in one of these corners.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure it out. All right, I'll keep looking, but go ahead. So Zeus is a child molester. I didn't know that. And also is uh, Baal or Baal, however one wants to pronounce it. That is super interesting. I did not know that either. So this is really new information to me.
Yeah, in fact, in New York, the elite wanted to build a archway dedicated to Baal, and everybody was like, "What are you guys doing? That doesn't make any sense. Why are you?" And they built one in D.C. too, but they wanted to build one in New York. They wanted to build a archway because an archway actually represents a portal from heaven. So they were trying to build an archway, and everybody's like, "What are you doing, you Satanists? Why are you trying to do that? Why are you trying to build an archway here?" And finally they had to relent a little bit, and I think they changed the name. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And that might be Minerva, or it might be Lilith, because in the Bible, Lilith is known as the screech owl. There's not a whole lot about Lilith in the Bible, but if we look at the Hebrew scriptures like the Zohar, that's where we get a lot of information about Lilith. And coincidentally, at Bohemian Grove, where they have that big effigy of the owl, what is it that we're really looking at? Are we looking at Moloch, like Alex Jones tells us, or are we looking at Lilith?
Yeah.
Both make sense. I mean, both
Oh,
have to do
here
with.
it is.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's much better than the one I had up originally. This one's saying it's a spider, but I think it's a nail. So yeah, it could definitely be Lilith. Well, so I will say that I know our what's it called, um, our saying for a pregnant woman, a bun in the oven is slang terms, and we have these worships to Molech or Moloch, where they put the child in the oven that is the stomach of this owl or a bull. So I think maybe the owl is the female and the bull is the male, something to that effect, that they are together. Maybe Lilith and Molech together are those two beings.
Yeah, you're
Possibly.
going down a very interesting road, actually, because that's very true. Lilith is sometimes referred to as a female aspect of Satan or Lucifer. So she
Right.
might be the female aspect of Moloch as well. And in fact, in the entranceway into the grove, there's another picture of an owl. It's next to that phrase, let not weaving spiders enter, something like that. And you also hear about the owl, the owl of Minerva, I believe, in the story of the Bavarian Illuminati.
Hmm. Very interesting. Very so. Let's break down the secret societies a little bit. I have,
Sure.
we went down it in my round table with Gary Wayne and the guys from Josh Monday's Christian and Conspiracy, Jim Williamson, and Ark. We went down that path a little bit, and we gave, a rundown, somewhat. Gary Wayne broke it down for us. But why don't you come in and give us how the power structure, in your eyes, how it actually goes, because they use the pyramid format for their secret societies, that there's a base secret society and then they build on top of it and so on and so forth. So why don't you give us a little rundown of that?
Okay, so the Illuminati really is not how people think. And instead of going the traditional route with this and lay you out a verbal diagram of what the New World Order looks like from the back end, I'm going to try to give you different perspectives. So you have the black nobility. None of them are black, of course. They're as white as snow. They hate black people, but they're called the black nobility for whatever reason. They're mainly Italian people and Khazarians. So they're Italian and Khazarians. And, there's nothing wrong with being Italian or a Khazarian, of course. These are really, really rich people that belong to very specific bloodlines that go back to Rome, like I was saying earlier. They're the cult of Saturn, basically. And these people are really well hidden. Like, a lot of people have this idea of all these politicians and policemen and judges and people like that being involved in the conspiracy. I would say that's probably not true. ultimately they're controlled by the 13 families at the top. But your average Freemason is not going to have a clue. Your average Rosicrucian, even at like a high level Freemason, is not going to have a clue about a lot of this stuff. I don't doubt that you get to a point in that organization where people probably do, but the organization probably has another name at that point, like Skull and Bones, something like that. They're all single cell organizations, so they're not connected to each other.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah, the actual Illuminati, and not that they're the Illuminati. The Illuminati is originally a good organization that goes back to those, those pre-mud flood times you were talking about. The real Illuminati goes way, way back before all that stuff, before all the resets and everything. They were a good organization created by a god named Enki. They were called the Brotherhood of the Snake, and they existed for a long time, and they did a lot of good back then. But over time, they were corrupted by dark forces, by demonic forces, and greedy, selfish humans. And over time, the mystery schools were corrupted. So the people that are calling themselves the Illuminati nowadays, they're really more of a cabal. It's these evil people that are sort of left over from the Atlantean kingship of ancient times. And there's strong evidence that they might not even be human. They might be some sort of hybrid, that they're Nephilim basically, and they're very well hidden. And I suppose you would call their circles druidic circles, and they use a very ancient form of magic called draconian or dragon magic, which is lost to most of us nowadays, besides a few people like myself that actually have a little bit of a clue what's going on. And unfortunately, we are watched very closely. So I've got the eye on me, and it sucks. I'm not going to beat around the bush about it. It sucks. But I endure and I persevere because I do believe in God. But I digress. So the actual Illuminati isn't necessarily what people think. These hybrids, Nephilim, partially maybe because they're a little bit strange looking, they stay well hidden. They're probably in Antarctica, Bavaria, Switzerland. They're spread out in, I believe there's some in the UK and in England, in London, but they're very well hidden again. And what you're mostly dealing with is what we call the Legion from the Bible. So let's look at the CIA and the FBI. The CIA and the FBI are just organizations that are kind of there for us to look at and observe and be like, oh, someone's protecting us, someone's doing something. But really, there's an underlying network of secret societies underneath them that have all kinds of oddball names. And these are the ones that actually take orders from the 13 families to go out and gang stalk people and bother them and try to stress them out until they stop talking about the 13 families or talking about the Illuminati. See, these are the monsters, besides the giants, the Nephilim, the monsters. They have the ability to shapeshift, whatever you think they are. These are your vampires and your werewolves from the past, and they actually exist in family bloodlines. And this is really what the Illuminati is. I mean, I know it sounds insane, but the reason why we have so much folklore centered around vampires and why vampires are so popular is because vampires are real, and they like when we talk about them, and we like when we celebrate their ways, and we have kind of an exoteric understanding of them. But it's close. It's not that far off from the fantasy stuff, and that's really scary.
So, okay, so how do you think that they shapeshift? Are they physically shapeshifting? Are they in a physical body, or are they just projecting themselves here from another dimension?
So basically the way you do it is like the skinwalkers from North America. They'll take like a piece of an animal or a piece of its fur, and they'll attach it to themselves, and they'll take certain drugs, and this allows you to kind of tune into the animal and vibe with it, vibe with its DNA, I guess. And what's actually happening is, first you're doing psychological things to change your astral form, and then once you get really good at astral shapeshifting and sending your astral form off to the witch's sabbat and things like that, oftentimes this astral form will look like a bat. They'll call it like a werebat or something like that, or there's various names like that. And you can take this form. You can actually go, like, I could, if I was into this nasty stuff, I could like leave my body and I'd have this wombat sort of warbat form, or whatever a vampire, they call it vampire. I'd be in this vampire form. I'd like come through your window and try to suck up your energy or something like that while you're sleeping, sucking it off your astral body. And this is how some ghosts actually survive past death. They take their, like, if you become a vampire and you learn to transform your astral body, you could use this magical ability of yours to it kind of escape death and stay on this plane rather than going to the life. And basically you're just going around with your astral sort of vampire body and sucking the chi or the ki or the life force off of other people, the kundalini. But going back to the Illuminati thing a little bit, these people that are calling themselves Illuminati, like the gang stalkers and people down at our ground floor level, the thing that's nice for the 13 families is these people aren't actually connected to them at all. These are people that got very into black magic. A lot of times they join local cults and things like that, gangs,
shamans.
Yeah, but dark shamans. And these are people that are just like, a lot of them are drug addicts, a lot of them are pedophiles, and they're just the lowest common denominator. And they're so unhappy and so miserable, they actually just decide to give their bodies up for demons. And what you're actually looking at when you're talking about the Illuminati is this network of demonic entities that they're called Legion. They call themselves Legion, and they work with or for the 13 families. And they're usually the ones that you see out there causing trouble and jumping into our leaders and making people miserable, gang stalking them and doing things of that nature. And these guys are also very, very tied to and immersed in shadow government, the people that might be working with reptilian aliens. Not that they're aliens, they're draconians, they're Nephilim from ancient times, but they might have some cousins that are in the other dimension that they can work with that have those cool reptilian technologies and things like that. That's why we have the phenomenon of the reptilian aliens, because they're ancient reptilian people that were the kings of old, the royal families today, and they're working with their interdimensional cousins to create the UFO phenomena, which is really a grand deception that they're using to keep us within this karmic Saturnian cycle.
Okay, so there was a lot in all of what you said there. Very interesting stuff. So Enki, you said, was benevolent. Am I correct?
Yes. So most of these draconian dragon gods that came from the matriarchal primordial dragon known as Tiamat, the primordial saltwater, sometimes Lilith is used to represent this. In the book of Genesis, it would be referred to as the Tehom, the greater abyss, the waters of the deep. So they all come from her, the great dragon. And you don't want to mess with Tiamat. I don't even think I should be saying that name, but it's written down in plenty of places. There's no way to avoid it. But this is a very, very powerful entity straight out of an H.P. Lovecraft novel. And they all pretty much descend from her. So most of them, unfortunately, are bad. They're considered STS entities, meaning that they're service to self. But of course, they are all capable of good as well. There are good draconian reptilians, good watchers. It was supposedly a third of them, but the other 2/3 of the angels or heavenly beings are good. So I think that's we have plenty to celebrate. We don't have to be depressed because most of the entities out there are actually on the side of source or God, et cetera, et cetera. But Enki is kind of he's an exception. And even in the stories, he's an exception. Like if we look into the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian material, we see that he's actually involved in helping humankind. He sent the Apkulu, which were like fishmen, after the flood to re-educate mankind, and so they kind of know what they're doing a little bit more and they could rebuild. But he's he's our creator. So he was the guy that was doing a lot of the DNA mixing and stuff like that. And he's the one that he wants us to have free will. He wants us to kind of go out on our own. But unfortunately, these bad guys are constantly impersonating him, and they're constantly like, people will think that they're channeling Enki, but really what they're channeling is the Lucifer demon or something like that. And you don't want to trust it, because it's the real Enki, because he'll talk to your heart. It's like some kind of demon or something like that if you're reading some kind of weird crap on the internet, some channel disinfo type of stuff. There are demonic evil entities that are pretending to be Enki, just like the Antichrist is going to copy Christ. They're doing the same thing with Enki. They're trying to turn him into like the bad guy and make you think that he's Satan. And they're also using him currently to manipulate people towards the grand deception, manipulate them towards like a new age type of religion.
That's interesting. It's food for thought. We'll definitely say that. So back to the secret societies and the Illuminati. So you said the 13 families. So to me, the 13 families that are discussed about in the conspiracy theory community are not actually the 13 families, that there's 13 families behind them that nobody knows their names. They literally own land masses, North America, South America, Africa, whatever, they own it. We all pay someone to be here. Everybody on some scale is paying someone to be in their home, to do certain things. And there's just certain people at the top. It sounds so ridiculous on the face of it. You're like, well, someone owns North America? Like, yeah, who is the United States in debt to? Who's China in debt to? Who are all these people in debt to? Someone has to be at the top of it all, right? It's all a pyramid scheme, right? So what is your take on the 13 families, and what does your research come up with?
So I can confirm the thing about the 13 families behind the 13. Like, for example, the Rothschilds would be more of an outward type of one. But it goes into this thing about the real Nephilim being well hidden. We'll never see them. We'll never know who their names are. You see certain names floating around, but those are almost always the exterior 13 families. It might not even be 13. It could be one person or who knows. But yeah, I could definitely confirm that they are well hidden. Just like, the queen has a certain amount of power, but there's that famous picture of one of the Rothschilds, and he's sticking his finger in Prince Charles' chest, and Prince Charles is just like, that they have a hierarchy where the higher members are kind of hidden. Another one's I think her name's Somerset Belanoff. She's called the Illuminati Queen, and she actually gives a lot of the orders, and she has a big mansion, but she has money, but she doesn't really have that public face. I'm sure you've heard of Pindar the Lizard King, another one. And really, it doesn't stop with humans. Like, we'd all like to think that, but these people are descended from the kings and queens of old. They've usurped each other and taken each other's places over the years. The originals aren't no longer in the picture. If you look into alternative history, you'll see plenty of evidence of that, of the royals, like the Stuart kings, etc., being replaced by like the Windsors and families like that around the time that Constantine gave up everything to the church, gave up the whole empire to the church for some unknown reason. But really, you get to a point and you hear about certain family members. Oh, well, I had to go and meet up with the Draconians and the Reptilians, and you might step through a portal and go to another dimension and do an initiation ceremony and then come back here to Earth. There's stuff like that going on, magic rings, things of that nature. The people at the top of the food chain, the top of the pyramid, they literally are just the progeny of the devil. They're Baal's literal children. They're his descendants. And these kings and queens of old, these Atlantean queens and kings, they're still reincarnating in their own family lines, because DNA is, or a spirit is able to reincarnate in DNA that's as close to its original body as possible. So these rituals that they're doing and things of that nature are to, you know, awaken who they really are, so they can remember, oh, hey, I'm a such and such king or something like
So
that.
is this why we have the phenomenon where you'll have like Nicolas Cage? It looks like he lived 100 and some years ago, and now he's here. Same with Greta Thunberg. That picture goes around lately. That it looks like they're the same exact person. Is that what this is?
Possibly, but more likely what you're seeing are people that just look like each other. But however, you know, I'm not trying to
A
poo-poo.
lot of famous people have that, though.
Yeah. So there's another phenomena here. It's the phenomena of life extension. So all these descendants of Baal that I'm talking about, descendants of the old gods, the hybrid Nephilim kings, they're all also very much into life extension. So this gets back into the vampire thing, where they are making potions out of kids that they abduct. They use kids because they have a lot of stem cells, and they can get the adrenochrome going, along with many other chemicals in the blood. Like, you can get high off blood. That's a well-kept secret. Like, you could cut my arm off and drain my blood into a cup and mix it with some stuff, and it'd probably get you high. You know, you get high off the adrenaline, especially if you scare the crap out of me first and drink some of my blood. You would get very high, and it would be a certain, like, pleasurable experience. And that's what we see, like, in the Anne Rice novels of Lestat or whoever. I forget what the Brad Pitt character is. He wakes up and he's seeing everything different all of a sudden, and everything just glows a bit more. This is an allegory or a metaphor of the draconian tradition of drinking blood, which does give you a high clairvoyance. It actually increases your psychic ability and your magical power, because it's mana, it's life force, and it actually extends your life. So, like Nick Cage, I mean, I think he played a vampire in a movie. He very well might be a vampire. I mean, again, you know, I gotta say, these are probably just people that look like each other. We don't want to go too crazy, but hey, there's something there to look into, because part of the reason why these old kings and queens of old were able to live so long, they had different DNA, of course, but they were also extending their lives. And you see it with Dracula. The real Dracula is drinking blood. You see it with Madame Bathory. You see with LeBron James, who's injecting himself with stem cells. And now they're actually bringing it to the surface, like that show True Blood, where all of a sudden the vampires come out of the coffin. You know, very funny, haha, right? But nowadays they're starting to talk about actually doing life extension stuff to elderly people using the blood of the young. That's like the latest sort of transhumanist science studies that you've been seeing going on. So that's pretty much what you're looking at the top of the pyramid. Some really freakish stuff.
Yeah, that it's so bizarre because we're so boxed in, but the more that you study it, the more it makes sense. And when you study the Bible under the guise of realizing that it's telling you who to look out for and what these people are practicing, and how you know it's them, there are different things where Jesus says, don't take an oath, don't swear any oaths to secrecy, which is the first thing that secret societies do. They swear that oath. And that is why, to me, you can't trust anyone who's taken that oath, because the first thing that they're supposed to do is protect each other and protect the oath. You're supposed to abide by that oath no matter what. So
yeah, it says do not take part in any rites in front of two pillars or pillar. And that's, from what I can tell, that's talking about the future and people joining Freemasonry.
Yeah, wow. I didn't know that it said two pillars. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and I have a bad habit, because I do read the Bible, but I don't always like write down what the passage is. So sometimes I'll have something, and I apologize, I don't have the actual scripture number, but I do have something here I want to read real quick. This is Leviticus 17:14. And it says, "For the life of every creature is its blood is its life. Therefore I have said to the people of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any creature, for the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. And this is Yahweh forbidding drinking blood, and this is why the Israelites were forbidden from mixing with the Canaanites.
Wow, that's interesting. And we were only allowed to start eating animals on the Noah on the boat because he didn't have enough food. So it's interesting that it says that we shouldn't have the blood of anything or else we'll be cut off, because as soon as that happened, our lives were shortened to 120 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems that this gives an advantage to the people that are behind the scenes and are able to extend their lives. Because, I mean, what can I do in my life? Like, I've accumulated all this knowledge. I know all this stuff about the Illuminati, of magic, of alternate history, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, I'm 39. I got maybe another 20, 30 years of this stuff. I'm a croak. And then what happens to all that stuff I learned? It just gets erased, and nobody's gonna, it's gonna be hard to get anybody to really run with that ball. Could get him killed. So what good is it for me? I mean, I'm not going to live that much longer. It's all this knowledge. What's the point? Unless I could live way longer and do something about it. And they know this.
Yeah. Well, man, this is some very interesting stuff. I haven't really thought about them drinking blood to extend their lives. I know about the magic and what it does to you, the psychedelic part of it, and I had some inclinations of different things, but I hadn't thought about it as that far, that they are living on by drinking the blood. And I know that there's a lot of different things happening with why they need children, and why it's so important for that aspect. So when you look at the science, it's mainstream today, as you said, stem cells. It's a very mainstream thing. I actually had a guy on way back when, episode 40 something, and at the very end, he said he was taking stem cells, and I was like, well,
Sure.
that's strange. He was an older man, and he became a millionaire through healing people through their addictions. But at the very end, he said that to me, and I was like, that's, it's not something that I'd ever do. I wouldn't want to extend my life in that manner. I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to partake in something to that effect. But you're right. It is. Maybe we feel like it's a waste, that nothing's happening with that information. But when we live on eternally, we use that information for wherever we go to next. Where when we cross over, we have our discernment, and maybe we're putting on the full armor of God while we're here on earth, so that when we cross over, then we can really use it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that somewhere, like maybe the Akashic records, or maybe just the spiritual 5D realm or heaven, or there's got to be somewhere where our memories are kept, because sometimes people do wake up, and like with the Dalai Lama, I believe, the Tibetan monks and all those people, they actually have a tradition where if a kid is born and they could find item that belonged to them when they were a Dalai Lama or Lama, then they get to resume that role, which is pretty trippy. But hey, I have a picture here. This is from my Instagram. I hope that, oh man, it's just not coming out.
Do you want me to pull it up on your Instagram?
Can you see?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, the bat on top of, was that this king's throne?
Yeah, this is actually from a family crest of the Marodi family, and they're part of the black nobility. And as you can see, their spirit animal or their mascot is a vampire bat. So it's a little bit more evidence of my thesis here. And what you're talking about earlier with the stem cells and all that, that if people that are familiar with David Icke might be familiar with the idea of starfire, which is actually menstrual blood from a woman. This is disgusting. I apologize in advance, but hey, it's the truth. It's a part of history. This period blood drinking ritual was very popular in the ancient past. There's so much different artwork all throughout time depicting it. It's because that's the blood that would normally be used to create a baby, and when a woman expels it, there's a lot of stem cells in there. So there's this whole ancient tradition, which the Templars were involved in, by the way, of drinking this menstrual fluid, probably mixing it with stuff to make it taste better, but actually consuming it and taking on those stem cells, which are just having some incredible regenerative properties. And when you think of the fact that they're doing a lot of stem cell research, and the fact that they're these particular fetal cells and tissues and stuff like that might be going in a certain thing that we're not talking about right now, because et cetera, et cetera. When you add all this stuff together with the thing, it really makes you wonder, like, this is some real black magic going on. Why do they
You're
want to
talking about
stick
the
this?
black goo thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The
The
Magellan.
mRNA.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to stick it into you one way. They can use chemtrails and drop it from the sky. They can put it in your food. There's so many different ways they can get it inside of you. So, you know, it's hard to prevent what's happening, but don't make a bad choice. Don't just say you can do what you want with with my body. Fight it. Resist.
Right.
Resist the temptation to take the easy road out and do what these sick, vile vampires want you to do. These people are not, like I said, they're not the original Illuminati. They're not even the original God Kings or anything like that. They're not the original gods. They're their long past descendants that have been massively corrupted by demons and demonic energies, and they're not what they used to be. They're not benevolent anymore. They're just a bunch of sick, vile troglodyte freaks, and they're going to drag you right to hell with them if you let them.
Oh, wow. That is very powerful words, my friend. I do have a question for you, because you're familiar with the secret society so much. So the IHS, that is the Jesuit initials, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And you're also familiar with the Moorish people of the Americas?
Yeah, absolutely. They had just an incredible culture, just very, very deep, and then totally ripped out of the history books, pretty much.
Yeah. So I want to bring this up to you, because this is a very strange thing that I've just uncovered recently from where I am from. So back in Philadelphia, or just outside of Philadelphia, I'm from a town called Prospect Park. And this town used to be called Moore. It was Moore. And there's a park there called Moore's Lake, but the people from Prospect Park, we knew it as the Hollow, because it wasn't a lake any longer. It was hollow. There was no water there. And the high school I went to, the initials for it were IHS. So very interesting stuff, because the amount of psyops that are happening in that area are, I mean, it is crazy, the amount of psyops that are going on there. The amount of people that are in secret societies, that it's the policemen, the teachers of these little neighborhoods that are just messing with people, that are being told to do these things at their meetings, and they're messing with people. And you think that you're crazy because everyone's against you if you wake up to this type of information. So all the people back home where I'm from, this may come as a surprise to you when I'm saying this, but these are not encoded for any just happenstance. It's not that, oh, Prospect Park just happened to be called Moore before and now it's not, and the high school is the initials IHS. It just happens to be that. Like, no, it doesn't just happen that way. It's that way on purpose. What do you think would be the purpose of doing this? Do you think that would be a coincidental thing, or do you think
Hypnosis.
Okay, so
Hypnosis.
to what degree?
Yeah, because one way that you can, like what I was saying with me, one way that you can actually start to see and open your eyes is to pay attention to the monuments in your own city, in your own town. I don't care if you're from bum shit Egypt. Go to your town square and see what they've got. Chances are it was made by Freemasons. It was made by some rich evil philanthropist that's somehow tied to Rockefeller, chances are it's tied to something. You know, you have a lot of the Egyptian stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But really, what this stuff is designed to do is to capture our attention on a subconscious level and reinforce the spell that we're all under. I don't know why, but when you see certain things and certain things like you just laid out to me just now, it does something to your brain. You know, and a lot of it's stolen stuff. It's words that they know have power and symbols that they know have power, even though they're not even involved in those, you know, what those symbols actually originally meant. Even though they're not even a part of that, they still throw them in our faces because they have power, and they can be used to kind of drain our energy and keep us locked within this matrix womb, this Saturnian reincarnation loop that's represented by the Ouroboros, you know, the serpent.
Snake eating its own
Yeah,
tail.
yeah, or the rings of Saturn. There's so many different things that represent them, and the Jesuits, of course, are just such a big part of this. The Catholic Church and the Vatican in general. Of course, the Jesuits have been suppressed, so I'm not trying to pick on Catholics because I know that there are good Catholics, like the Franciscans. I don't think the Franciscans are some evil, you know, organization, but you know, for the most part, the church, these are the bad guys because, like, even the Rothschilds, they originally come from the church, and the people that started the church are these cultists that they're the Saturnian mafia, the Saturnian death cults that were the aristocratic families back in Roman times, and they just continued their rule over the world. So really, it does sort of go back to the church. I mean, I hate to say it, but these are the false Jews of the Bible, is the actual church itself, and everything, including Zionism, including the Nazis. Unfortunately, it can all be traced back to the Jesuit. Hitler modeled just about everything. He said the Jesuits were the masters of this stuff. If I'm going to learn, I'm going to learn from the Jesuits. So he pretty much copied all of his horrible things he was doing to manipulate people from the Jesuits. And yes, they have been suppressed, but um it's obviously a very strong Luciferian draconian element in charge of the church. You could see parts of the church that look like snake eyes and stuff like that. You know, I don't even have to get into, you know, what I was saying earlier about Zeus and the pederasty and the pedophilia that goes on nowadays. They're the ones behind all the child trafficking. I hate to pick on the church, but it's just the truth. I mean, they're the closest thing to any sort of Illuminati that we have nowadays. And there's even rumors of, you know, a hidden pope on the island of Malta, you know, protected by the Knights of Malta, which are basically a standing army. They have their own military force, and all this stuff kind of goes on. And the Jesuits used Adam Weishaupt to shift all the blame onto the so-called Illuminati. That was part of the reason for doing that, is so that they could shift the blame. Oh, it's not us, it's not the church, it's the terrible Illuminati. That was kind of the idea behind that. And they do a lot of blaming the Jews too. They love to do that. They love to blame everything on the Jews and the so-called Zionists, but really they are the Zionists. You know, the Jesuits and the Vatican. So you're definitely spot on with that. You could look into the history of the P2 Lodge, the most nefarious Masonic lodge in existence, that were part of assassinations and all kinds of various crimes, and they were pretty much tied to the Jesuits, and you know, it all goes hand in hand.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot of information there, my friend. I want to start wrapping up here. I heard you touch on Atlantis earlier, and a lot of people think Atlantis was some kind of dreamland, but you were inferring that it was not so nice. So, what is your take on what Atlantis was?
Well, Atlantis was the world that existed before the flood. So it's more of an Atlantean world, and there was an actual Atlantis, but not what most people think. Atlantis was more of a worldwide thing, and it's in the sea, but it's not. And I'm kind of talking in code here because only certain people are going to understand this, and I don't want to just give it away, unfortunately, because it's dangerous information. I can't tell you what Atlantis really was or where it was at, but I can tell you that a lot of the cultures of North America and South America, they were from Atlantis, and that had a lot to do with the reason the conquistadors came over here and actually killed a lot of people. Back then, obviously you had high technology. You're familiar with a lot of the research, and the rumor has it, from the world of secret societies, that they actually destroyed themselves because they were using sorcery and they were abusing it and pretty much doing the same thing they're doing nowadays, which is use crystals. And we all have crystals in our cell phones and various golds and silvers and elements and stuff like that. They're in our computers and our phones. There's crystals, silver and gold. The Anunnaki wanted us to mine gold. Why? Because they're using it to build technology, and they're putting it in their bodies and making potions and doing all kinds of things with it. It was valuable then, and it's valuable now. But these Atlanteans, they were getting involved in a lot of the same stuff. They were draconian back then, just like they are now, and they were mind controlling everybody. And eventually, things had to give, just like we're seeing right now. And we're in another phase of resets. None of us really know how many there's been. Like in the Matrix movies, they say, "Oh, there were 6 or 7 different Matrixes." So we don't know what matrix we're in. We don't know what's real and what's not. It's really scary. But what I like to do is, the Bible. I'm really into the Bible. The King James, right here, the Bible. This is my truth right here. But I have to admit, even the Bible has had Satan's fingerprints on it. So there's times when I feel like I can't necessarily trust everything in the Bible, even though that's my book, that's my truth. So I like to think about source. Source is just the source of everything, just love. It's pure love, where everything came from, where all creation and light came from. And I just want people to remember source and think about source.
There you have it, folks. This was a very fascinating conversation. We kind of, scattered a little bit about, because there's so many different interesting topics to cover. And I'm sure we could go on and on about all these different things for quite some time, because you have many, many different experiences that maybe we could get into another time. That
Yeah,
I would like
especially
to
if
get
I have
into.
this right here, I'll never shut up.
Was it coffee?
Yeah, it's coffee. Let's
Yeah.
go on and on.
Yeah, so you will be back on my birthday. So in the background here, anyone watching the video, this is a flyer for my birthday episode. So I'll be turning 32, and we have Kara, Misty, Whitney, Malcolm, Daniel, and Terry. So, and Mimi and myself right here. So we'll all be on my birthday episode, and we will be talking about entering Christ's kingdom, and how we will be talking about the false narratives that are put out there by Christianity, or not by Christianity, by those who control the church. As you were saying, Catholicism, Christianity is basically run by Satan, and only given some information. They give you half truths in there, and everything else is controlled to keep you tamped down. So we'll be doing that. We'll be destroying the New Age doctrines, all the nonsense on there. I look forward to doing this so much, and I want to point out all the different fake things that are out there that people are observing, that they turn around and talk about the secret societies are bad for doing them, but that it's okay to do it if you're doing it for this reason. I actually heard someone talk about Odin gave his eye for knowledge, but he was actually talking bad about the Illuminati in like the same breath. And it's like, what do you think the one eye symbolism's for? They're giving their eye for knowledge. Like, it's the literal same thing. So People don't even understand what they're doing and what they're talking about. They really don't. And you have to pray to Christ, read your Bible, as you're saying, even though it may be corrupted, things are obviously taken from and added to, but there is a base truth in there. And you have to be growing your own discernment doing, by just communicating with Christ, really, no matter how you do it. You have to communicate with Christ. And that is the only thing that'll give you clarity and allow you to see things for what it actually is. And when you want to use all these other different gods and deities and spirits and whatever people use out there, you're being tricked. They come as angels of light because they wouldn't be very effective if you knew right away that they were up to no good, because people don't want to be tricked. People don't want to be up to no good. People tend to, unless you're like a rebellious 14-year-old who's angry and says, "Yeah, I want to do something. I want to have these powers so I can make people pay that hurt me." And then a demon comes to them, and then they'll be scared out of their wits. They'll be like, "No, I want to go to Christ now." So that it doesn't work that way. They have to gain our trust. So I can't wait to do that episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to give you a big amen on that one.
Is there anything left that we didn't touch on that you wanted to get out there for the audience?
Just give me a End of Days Radio wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on BitChute, YouTube, and of course endofdaysradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at Ninja Shoes. Follow me on Instagram. Check me out on Parlor, End of Days Radio, and of course the new TLB Talk. That's a new social network that's going to be on the blockchain. It's going to be totally free, as in you're not going to get shadow banned or deplatformed or anything like that. I don't have anything to do with those guys. I just believe in the project. So join up there and add me as a friend.
There you go, folks. Go make sure you check out all Daniel's stuff, and make sure that you stay tuned for the special birthday episode. We will say goodbye to our audience. Goodbye, everybody. We will talk to you later.